Welcome to the Nuclear Snail channel. This is the first installment of the Yes Dumb Questions video series, probably, because I don't think it will be the last one, but it is the first one. I've posted in the Nuclear Snail community group on Facebook, linked down below. Also my Patreon is linked down below. So in my community group, I've posted give me your dumbest questions, and boy were there a lot of them, but most of them weren't actually dumb. But regardless, I'm answering. So it also included a pretty cool meta kind of question, like why do people get flagged for asking dumb questions? I will also answer that, but I'll just go in no particular order, or rather the order they were posted in. Let's just dive straight into it. Why are natural fibers so overlooked for post-apocalypse? As an example, here are yucca sandals. Yucca is this kind of like natural, like really rough and natural looking, kind of like basket looking fiber. Here are yucca sandals are made with nothing but plants and a needle. They would make sense in that setting, but somehow don't fit the genre. Excellent question, not dumb at all, and we will have to unravel a bit of world building stuff and cultural trends and all that to answer that. I love this question. So it's going to be a bit complicated, but it's also going to be cool as hell, so stick with me. So, you say they don't fit the genre. Which exact genre do you mean? Mad Max? What about the feral kid in Mad Max? Fallout? What about some settlement in Fallout that lives off of natural stuff exclusively? I don't know if there ever was one. I didn't play all the Fallout games. The last one I played was New Vegas. Maybe I missed something. Any other fictional universe? What if there is just a faction, a village, a whole civilization of people in that post-apocalyptic world that in fact do live in accord with nature, or hell, they don't even need to be 100% hippies. They just need to have access to that resource or want to be using that resource, and they could be making something like this from natural fibers. Now we also have to differentiate, like right now this is a cotton short. Cotton is natural fiber, but if you look at this, you wouldn't go like, oh, like this guy is so natural, he lives, like he's one of the neo, like children of the earth kind of faction people. Like, no, you look at this, you go, it's a bunker boy. So it's, I think what's meant by this question is rather things that are natural and look very natural. And yeah, what I'm saying is there 100% could be a faction like this in any post-apocalyptic universe known to me and unknown, or almost any. Of course, they're like on the, let's go from the other side. I can imagine that in some of the post-apocalyptic settings that exist or could exist, there might be a situation which excludes a faction like that existing. For example, everything is happening in underground bunkers where there is only technology and nothing grows or something like this. But in your, like in the general sense, I would rather be hard-pressed to find a kind of universe into which this would not fit. So I also recently worked on concept arts and some key arts for a game named False Dichotomy, and it's the about the false dichotomy between science and nature. So a false dichotomy, it's when it's assumed or people think that two things are mutually exclusive. It's a pretty cool game concept. The nature faction, they had exactly that kind of, like, the moment I saw that picture in my group, I was like, yeah, this could have been for that faction, you know? So yes, this absolutely exists. This is a thing, you can do it. If you pull it off well, I would celebrate it. Now let's get to the question, like, but somehow doesn't fit the genre. If you do it too much in such a way that it's 100% just like a nature person, it might just look like it's for a fantasy genre. There is no indication to us that it is a post-apocalyptic setting. So if you do something like this, you kind of have to include a bit of other elements that are indicative of a lost civilization that resembles ours in some way. I mean, you don't have to technically, but if you don't, then how do you know it's not for just some forest-dwelling people from Middle Earth? You know what I mean? If you mix it around a bit, then it's really kind of cool, a cool combination, and I would absolutely celebrate something like this done well. I think I haven't seen it done well, or at all, a lot of times, because people also, myself included, a lot of times start from things that are there, like starting from this short. Like, not a lot of people will go and like, I'm gonna imagine a village that lives off of natural resource in the post-apocalypse. They trade a bit, so maybe they have buckles or whatever, but they still put them on their traditional garment, which they have developed over the last 100 years living with nature after the end of the world, and they also like do this and that and that. That's a lot of world building required for you to do, while you can just get a short and play Bunker Boy. So what do you think most people are gonna do? So it's a pretty tough concept to pull off, both just conceptually, also technically not a lot of people have the skill or the patience. It's just a very tall order, but if you do it well, fucking A, so go for it. Do post into the group. I will do whatever I can to help you with advice if you want me to. It sounds like an amazing concept. It is absolutely a thing that is overlooked a lot of time. Like, you could imagine a faction where they do have a lot of those natural fibers and stuff, but that's not the only thing they use, and make some sort of a cool mix. You know, sort of how I usually tell people to mix up their military and civilian clothing for things like, let's say, late zombie apocalypse kind of thing, so it doesn't look like a soldier 100% of times. Here you could mix up the natural looking stuff with some less natural looking stuff. Maybe your weapon is like a modernized rifle, which however has maybe some nature trinkets on it or whatever, and you have like freaking sandals and a freaking battle rifle that shoots lasers, you know. That would be an interesting idea, an interesting mix. There is a lot of ways to implement this, and I know I'm ranting a bit. I just love this idea. I love that you bring this up. It's just something that I would myself love to see more of. I'm just not good at that kind of thing. Takes time, takes specific set of skills not everyone has. Reminds me on this person from Wasteland Weekend doing like. It wasn't natural, it was like synthetic rope. They were making synthetic rope from like twisting it and stuff. You know who you are. That looked cool. So this kind of thing would also go hand in hand. It doesn't need to be from a natural material. It could also be from something that is upcycled, recycled, and then processed the way that people traditionally process natural fibers. It can be a mix of those two. Maybe there is some Bunker Boy armor on top of that, or in parts of that. You know, mix it up. See what gives. So next question, which is kind of similar-ish in terms of world building. Zippers. How long would they last after an apocalypse? Not long at all. I use them in my costumes myself, but I feel like a bit of a poser every time I do. They for sure seem to be quite technical to produce, yes. Buttons are way more realistic, but nowhere as handy. Again, it depends on the situation, the setting, the universe that your character finds themselves in or is from. There could be absolutely a supply of zippers in a post-apocalyptic world. Produced by some technologically a bit more advanced faction. You know, zippers, they are technically more complex, but they're not rocket science. And it's not like in a apocalyptic setting they would have not been invented yet. They have been invented. They're just a bit of a pain in the ass to make, yeah. But I can imagine someone would absolutely be exporting them. For example, like imagine there is like a bit more industrial-ish society. They sell zippers, they buy food from a village which does not have zipper factories, but they do produce potatoes. So you exchange a zipper for a potato, here we go. That said, yes, even on 1980s military surplus garments, like pants and jackets and stuff, there are buttons a lot of times instead of zippers. Not on all of them, there are a lot of zippers and they still hold up. but they also are usually the first thing to fail. Yeah, so the zippers would absolutely fail all the time. You've also you've seen me replace failed zippers with some other more sturdy closing and attachment methods a lot of times. Zippers are a weak point. That said, you don't have to feel as a poser because, first of all, it's costuming, it's more convenient. I do it all the time myself anyway. If I don't break the zipper when modding the thing, which happens a lot of times, which again shows you that they wouldn't be great. But again, the existence of zippers in a post-apocalyptic world cannot be absolutely excluded. But if you want to go more low-tech, more authentic, more whatever, and you say, no, my character doesn't have access to zippers they buy from a higher tech faction or something, then yeah, buttons are 100% more reliable and easy to replace, produce, and whatnot, which is why even on 1980s German surplus military items, they were used much more than you would think. So, hope that answers that. How many characters do people have? LARP characters, of course. Does anybody play the same guy every time, or do they change? And do people have different outfits for the same character, or just one? Great question. It really depends on two factors, mostly on the LARP you're going to, and also on yourself. So on the LARPs I used to go to, for example, on the German LARPs, there was the rule that if you die, you absolutely have to have a spare character with a spare set of clothes for them. So you wouldn't be required to change every single item, underpants included. It would be just a thing where you, if you're dead, you change into your other character, and that character needs to be recognizable as a different character on the first glance. If that's fulfilled, that's how most people went about it. You don't need to change your underpants for that. On other LARPs, you might have a respawn rule where your character isn't permanently dead, or they can return the next year or whatever. It depends on the LARP. So this is very difficult to answer like that. As for me in general or yourself, I said it's two factors. One is the LARP, other is you. So while I had different characters, including some secondary, just fun and nonsense characters, all of my series first characters, they were all named J. Regardless of the LARP. On the Alien Apocalypse LARP, on the Zombie LARP, on the 200 Years After Nuclear Fallout LARP, Apocalypse thing, whatever. On all of them, my character would always be named J. And it could be from Jason, from James, from Yevgeny. Abbreviation would always be J for one simple reason: it's short and I like it, and it's sounds kind of universal, and also it's less of a pain in the ass for everybody playing with me because they know me as that from other other LARPs. And some might say, some purists might be like, oh, this is lazy character building. I don't give a fuck. So you can do it, of course, that your characters are always different, and a lot of people do. A lot of people enjoy having a great variety and stuff. For me, it was also always one version of me or another with some traits different or exaggerated. But I accept my fun and nonsense secondary characters. All my primary characters were usually just me in that world's version in one way or another. Some would be more brave or reckless, some would be more shy and conservative, but it would usually be some version of me. That's the way I enjoy going about it. Some people enjoy making a freaking cat person character. Mia Schinde comes to mind. Great cat people characters, and other completely crazy characters which are just out of this world, basically. And some people enjoy this giant range of different characters and different perspectives, and dressing up as a cat person, as a monster, as a whatever, as a mutant. It's just up to you, really, mostly. So fulfill whatever your LARP requires of you. Don't be too lazy about it, and do what you enjoy. Yeah, I hope this answers that. Also, noteworthy, while you might be playing the same character, it's a good idea to design your outfit in a way that you can chuck off the top part of your clothes, or you just have a combat costume and a civilian costume. A lot of people do that as well on the same character, so you don't run in your 90-pound armor all the damn time, even when you're like in a safe location and don't have to fight or whatever. Might be just done by taking the armor off and stashing it in the mercenary guild or whatever you might be part of, and going then to the bar without the armor, or. So it's not like one character has to look exactly the same all the time either. Next question: how far is Star Wars cosplay, rebellions, civilians, away from the use of the methods in post-apoc cosplay? I cannot tell you much about post-apoc cosplay since I've done barely any cosplay of that, but I think the question is not just about cosplay, but general costuming, look, and techniques. And I would say in the more recent Star Wars films and series and stuff, like, yeah, there is a lot of grunge work, weathering, distressing, and all of that going on. And it's not, in terms of looks and general weathering level, as well as like fantasy level, depending on the genre of post-apocalyptic you're going for, it might not be that far off at all. I can even imagine some post-apocalyptic faction that looks less weathered and distressed as some of the more distressed rebels in some Star Wars franchise parts. As for what exact methods they use, I don't know, but the results speak for themselves. As far as costumes go, in some of the recent Star Wars movies, they were pretty impressively weathered. So yeah, I don't have much more else to say about that. Like, it doesn't need to apply to Star Wars specifically. You can just look around at any film or series or whatever you might be seeing and notice that, yeah, they use weathering techniques. I mean, at the end of the day, those are just weathering and distressing techniques, although for Star Wars Rebels in particular, they do share some general stylistic core principles that a lot of post-apocalyptic designs also do share, like improvisation, color balancing being kind of a bit subdued with sometimes highlights and stuff. So yeah, there are some similarities. That was the question, and like how far exactly it is, I don't know. But you're not the only one who noticed the similarities that do exist there. Yes. What options are there for customizing weapons so they're not just the umpteenth rifle, saw blade club, etc., but stand out from other weapons and have the appropriate recognition value? Excellent question. As a concept artist, I can answer that. It's just a bit difficult. One thing would be to have a defined shape / features. If you, like, since we just talked about Star Wars, why not? Think about the Mandalorian rifle, like the Disruptor rifle with the two prongs on the front. Very distinct shape, right? You see that, you go like, oh yeah, like, I recognize that, this is that. So if you're not bound by any sort of realism rules, you can just go balls to the wall and just invent your own unique silhouette, your own unique shape of the weapon. If you do want to follow some realism rules, on the other end of the spectrum, surprisingly or unsurprisingly enough, a lot of times, especially when it comes to like Hollywood movies and stuff, a lot of people who are into guns will usually celebrate it if something is done in a more realistic way, actually. If reloads are shown, if the weapon layout makes sense with all the bits and bobs and so on. So just going actually pretty realistic is a way of standing out. Another way of standing out is just making sure that you're not using nerfs. I'm sorry to everyone like who does that. It's just my personal opinion. A lot of nerf mods out there look really cool from all the other perspectives, but the moment I see the base is a nerf, my entire immersion is out. That's just me. Do what you want. My word is not gospel, I'm just one guy, okay? But you asked me for advice, I'm giving you advice. So using a nerf base instantly takes me out. and then I cannot see it as anything but a nerf, with a few exceptions. There have been some exceptions where I was like, wow, I see it's a nerf, but it's no longer bothering me. It does happen. Another way to stand out is very good paint jobs. Chris Hobbs' works come to mind. The paint jobs are so excellent that it can be like your standard Mark 18 or whatever underneath that. I love the Mark 18, but we have seen it a dozen million times by now. But he will paint it in such a way that it looks like, wow. So an excellent paint job that stands out. And by that I don't mean just a bit of rust, but an actually conceptually interesting paint job. And usually it's just a combination of all of those things. So ideally it's a weapon that has a unique shape and a unique kind of paint job. I know nothing is unique under the sun, but if it just has a coherent visual design, including the paint job, including the shape, including the bits and bobs you attach, there is this like cliche thing of attaching like dingly dongly bits onto it. If those are somehow special, that might be a cool thing. Although for me, like in this day and age, I will just go like, it breaks immersion for me. I rather see a weapon without dingly dangly bits and bobs on it. But if those are done really well, and if those are unique in some way, Red Roach has done a really cool weapon design, although he himself admitted he doesn't know a lot about weapons. But he's done one where there was like this fake skeleton leg as the stock. That looked unique and cool for a raider kind of design, or like a wasteland necromancer, I guess, or whatever. I guess it was a raider design more likely. But that was cool. So some elements that are unique and stand out, and they of course should fit your own character. Yeah, so shape, paint job, conceptually interesting things that replace some parts of the prop with something unexpected but still functional, because this stock with the foot, the leg, it still fulfilled the purpose of being a stock. It was just a very raider thing to do. What else? Like Elysium weapons come to mind, which are very grounded and based, but you still have this, like for example, that high-tech attachment on top of a retro AK rifle. It was a combination of old and new. Combination of old and new is oftentimes a really cool idea to also spark interest. Like that AK people do remember because it's an old ass AK, but with like a futuristic attachment on it and futuristic ammunition. If it was just a futuristic rifle, it would also be cool. I mean, in Elysium there was also this cam rail weapon, and people do remember that, but the AK is like the number one that people remember from that film, I think, because of this combination of old and new. So just for any other prop or costume part, just consider what would be surprising and unusual, yet still kind of functional in the universe that you're building for. Okay, I have to change the battery. Be right back. Alright, next one. I do have two questions here. One about does the post-apocalyptic style have subgenres? I've made a video about that called What is Post-Apocalyptic and What Isn't. You might want to watch that. And I also have a very big question. How does costuming and LARP culture differ between regions, especially between Central Europe and Wasteland? I'm gonna answer that in a different video. It's a huge freaking topic and it would make this video twice as long. So sorry, I'm skipping this one for now. Going right to the next one. I have a bunch of materials and supplies that I cannot hold on to moving to an apartment. I've already downsized so much and don't want these scraps to go to waste. Tried posting it at a Wasteland Weekend group but got radio silence. Where can I go to offer the supplies so that they may be used for badass post-apocalyptic crafts rather than being tossed? It's a sad situation, I'm sorry to hear that. I've never been in that situation yet myself, although I have too much crap lying around as well. So I don't know how you've posted it, but the thing about modern social media is that people just scroll quickly, and if there isn't a set of good pictures of the items you're offering, and they're very clear, very short. Hey, offering this for free, pick it up here and there, or like offering it for shipping or whatever you might want to do. Like, it needs to be a short, visually appealing, clear message, not just so that people accept it to begin with, but so that they even see it at all while scrolling through. Welcome to the modern social media bullshit landscape. You might also want to try and write directly to some American crafters. I'm assuming you're American since you mentioned Wasteland Weekend. So you might want to write to some individuals rather than just posting it into the group, and ask them if they want 3 crates of whatever the hell it is. I would also suggest tossing everything that's just not very good or very common items that everyone's pretty much going to have, and just keeping the really good ones. I mean, they could be common but still good, but you know what I mean. Just toss all the meh stuff, keep the good ones, make good pictures of those, post those, and write those also directly to people that might be interested in them, that you know to be crafters. Good luck. I hope your items find a new home and will be used in some badass way. Would be sad if they went to waste. So, what are some options to do with sleeves? Not shoulders, not wrists. The space between your armpit and your watch band. Good question. So one thing that comes to mind are elbow pads or some other sort of elbow protectors, if that fits your character. Another thing that comes to mind is that this area is generally, because you have your elbow there, and elbow protectors do add doohickery to your movement, this area moves a lot, right? You want to be moving your elbow a lot. So you cannot exactly go with too much stuff there. I mean, there are those medieval knight armor plates that are round and go on the elbow. You could also do that. But in general, what I usually do is just concentrate my highly detailed, hard or harder or more loaded in general areas to the wrist, to the shoulder, sometimes to the elbow, but often not, and I will just have some sort of a basic sleeve that exactly does not that much. You could add stencils and obviously weathering. You could add some other layers, for example, some other texture layer, like for example you have your base sleeve from a long sleeve shirt, and on top of that you add another one that has a lot of holes in it, for example. So you could do basically all kinds of solutions that do not involve attaching heavy or rather difficult to move in stuff to your elbow area. So that would be my take on that. How do I stop making my rust effects from looking like I smeared poop on myself? Number one solution that I've done a lot of times is just not doing rust effects. If you look at my works, 99.9% of those do not have rust effects at all. Have you noticed? No, because I add some other dirt effects to that, but it's never really rust. Getting kind of dark here. Here we go. Another solution is I have a video about this. It's rust paint that has actual iron particles in it, and then there is like an activator and stuff like that. You might find that. Just look for a rust effect on my channel. So that will give you real rust. You gotta be careful with that stuff, and you gotta see where you find it, wherever it is you live. I don't have sources for it, but I do know that they sell them, especially at places that specialize in retro or like special car paints, but you might also find it somewhere else. And the third version is if you want to be able to just simulate good-looking rust from things that are not literal rust. You just might want to look into techniques for painting miniatures, like Warhammer miniatures or any other sort of like, post-apocalyptic miniatures also. Just miniature painting and just getting good at just painting, like creating believable rust effects. There are a ton of tutorials on that, and I don't see why you could not use those on your costumes as well. How do you distress leather? Gee, I don't know. If only I had ever made a video about that like a decade ago, and then another follow-up video like 5 years ago. You might want to look on my channel. It's one of my most viewed videos. How do you relax on wanting to make everything functional and just make a fun prop? Oh, I know this problem very well. Not in my post-apocalyptic works, but currently I'm working on a project where I was really obsessed with realism. And I've decided that in the end of the day, for that one, I'm gonna go pretty realistic, and that's it. That said, if you want, you can also go and accept that the current genre you're making it for is, at least in your mind, really comic level stuff. It's absurd. Like, for example, I love John Wick movies, but they're about as realistic as a comic, right? He's just like a superhero taking insane amounts of damage, and his suit is bulletproof, and like John Wick is like one step away from being Superman, basically, in terms of how realistic the whole thing is, right? And nobody goes around like, oh, John Wick, so unrealistic and stuff. Everybody knows it's unrealistic, especially the tactical guys, but the tactical guys also are the ones who love it the most, because they just want to see the things that they usually know don't work in that movie or in those movies. Because by now there is like 5 parts of it. I think can apply to your prop and costume making. Just tell to yourself, I fully accept this is comic level stuff for me, and I'm just gonna roll with it and make something that doesn't make sense just because it's fun for this setting. You can just one-up the ridiculousness of it and say like, you know what? Not only am I gonna make like this weapon prop that is kind of unrealistic, I'm gonna attach a freaking thing to it that doesn't make any sense at all, that makes it ridiculous. I'm gonna just go full on comedy on this. So this is another thing you can do. How do you come up with headgear if you wear glasses? Wear a hat, which does not interfere with your glasses. I know you prefer sewing with screws. What kind of screws, washers, etc. do you like to use? First, those are bolts and not screws. And I know that video was titled Screw Sewing because bolt sewing doesn't really sound that cool. But it's a difference. I have a whole separate video about that. Last question for today. Why do people get flack for asking dumb questions? I mean, what if they're just starting out and legitimately don't know? I get that research is available, but asking a whole community is research in my opinion. If someone is completely new, what they should usually do is check out the available resources first, because that will clarify 90% of questions. If you still don't get something after that, it's fine to ask. The thing is, I usually can tell the difference between someone who just tried and still legitimately isn't getting something, which is fine, versus someone who just crashes in and wants a shortcut to look cool in one day for free, with the others doing every step of the work for them, at least mentally. And that's a no-go. So there are 2 options. One is you want to learn. 2 is you don't want to learn but want to look cool anyway, in which case you can commission me or any other crafter you like to make a costume for you, for money. What you cannot do is be cheap and demand us or feel entitled to all the advice in the world without you having invested any brain power of your own into it. So this is the thing that usually tends to tick people off. So nobody hates noobs, but people do hate laziness and entitlement, and this is where people will get flack. I hope this Q&A episode was entertaining and maybe some food for thought for you. And yeah, we still have some questions unanswered that will go into the next one. Sorry again, because those questions about regional differences and different styles and subgenres of post-apocalyptic is just a big topic. So, until then, support me on Patreon, linked in the video description. Join the Nuclear Snail community group where you can ask dumb questions as long as you have watched at least some of the available resources. And I wish you fun crafting, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.